I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti. This is a quick chat with Ruth Wasserman Lande. Ruth, thanks very much for joining me. You recently went viral on a Channel 4 news interview for a reason, I would say. Watching it, it felt like you and the presenter were speaking not just about completely different things, but almost completely different languages. Can you tell me, was that your experience of it, and how did it feel from your end?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your platform, and it's an honor for me. How did it feel? It felt like many interviews that I've done in the past almost 2 years. Not very different, I must say.
Now, Canada has the biggest number of Muslim Brotherhood members in the entire globe. I wish them good luck. In fact, sir, I wish you and the British people a lot of luck, because you will, unfortunately, and I pray for you from the bottom of my heart as one mother to the mothers of the United Kingdom, that you will be safe. Because you are being overtaken by extremist Islamist forces. Now, there are good Palestinians.
Actually, you know what?
There are good Palestinians.
Yes, okay.
But the Hamas is very bad. And they are taken hostage by those bad Hamas people.
We've now run out of time.
Ruth.
I was asked questions which were critical with a very obvious bias, but I'm used to it. I didn't think anything special of it, quite frankly, and I answered to the best of my knowledge, experience, analysis, as politely as I could. You know, it doesn't help to lose it or take it personally. And yeah, I mean, I just told what feels to me, not only feels, but I deal with this issue professionally all the time. I'm an Arabist. I speak Arabic. I spend time in an Arab country. I studied Islam. You know, I spent time and energy trying to understand the other side, so-called. And to the best of my knowledge, I try to leverage that information and experience and simply answer those very specific and very biased questions, because it does appear as if Channel 4 already knows the answers to all their questions.
As you mentioned there, you alluded to it, you've worked in intelligence, you've worked in diplomacy, you've been a member of Knesset. What does it tell you that a major UK broadcaster like Channel 4 News has this kind of moral slogans approach rather than actually asking questions of an expert and listening intently to the answers?
So it's very obvious that the international media, Channel 4 included in that, has a bias towards Israel. Now, on the one hand, it's very upsetting, it's very annoying, it's very hurtful, because as a person who lives this reality, and honestly, I mean, I don't even belong to the current leading coalition and have no specific political, let's say, I'll speak on behalf of the current government. I do have a feeling that there is a bias inherent in the international media. However, I do want to say something which may sound very strange. In a manner of speaking, I almost don't blame them. I do blame them because as journalists and as very intelligent people, they should check their facts better. But Israel should do a much better job at explaining what on earth it is doing. Because obviously some people don't get it. Some people get it and, you know, choose to, you know, be anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist, anti-Jewish, anti-everything, and simply blame Israel for everything. It suits their agenda, either because they're siding with one of the antagonists of Israel, and or they have a different kind of a take. But some people simply don't know, and all they hear all the time, in fact, they are truly indoctrinated by international media and pictures that come out and many of them are not truthful, and they're edited and they're specifically thrown out there to create a kind of an image. I mean, the Hamas has made truly an art, a sophisticated art out of it, and all of it is funded, actually very well funded, for years by Qatar in a very profoundly sophisticated, systematic manner, which I have to say is extremely impressive if you're not involved in any way and it's not actually your people who are literally getting carnaged out of this horrific situation. I mean, they are doing a brilliant job at creating an image to liberal people. And those liberal people are made to buy a story which is anything but liberal. And as an Arabist, as an expert in Arab affairs and Islam, I mean, God knows if there's something that I know, it's that. So on the one hand, it's horrifically annoying, but on the other hand, I must say, I take my cap off of the absolutely amazing, sophisticated campaign that is led by Qatar, PR campaign that is working brilliantly, and Israel is doing literally nothing about it.
So, I mean, you mentioned there that you aren't really aligned with the current government coalition in Israel. Just for those who don't know, explain where you sit on that spectrum politically, and also has that changed at all during the last 2 years, either on or around October the 7th or since, in response to the kind of orchestrated attacks on Israel that you've seen from the world media and others?
So first of all, I was an MK, a member of Knesset with the centrist Blue and White Party up to 2.5 years ago. I feel very strongly about serving my country and my people. I'm a strong Zionist. Let there be no mistake about it. I feel that Israel is a safe haven and a sanctuary for Jews, and God knows, anybody who has eyes and ears knows that if there was no Israel, honestly, the Jews would be exactly like the Yazidis and the Druze, and who are massacred literally without any protection. But I belonged to a party that was in the opposition. In fact, we were in the leading coalition when I was a member of parliament. We were the coalition, and the Likud was in the opposition for about 11 months. But I want to stress that in this issue of the so-called attack by radical Islam on Israel, on my people, but also on the entire West, there is no right and left and coalition and opposition. I refuse to be part of that. I don't feel that they can be a part of it. I don't feel that we have a privilege to be a part of it, although I know that many Israelis, given the vibrant democracy that exists here, feel strongly against what I'm saying right now and are very, very critical of the current government, which is fine.
It's like a healthy democracy, basically, you know.
Very, very healthy. I would say extremely healthy democracy.
Maybe a bit too healthy sometimes.
Perhaps even a little too healthy, exactly.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time arguing with one another, which is absolutely fine and very bright, vibrant. I do feel, however, that this is this transcends politics.
Yeah.
The fact that Israel was attacked on October 7th in a horrific, inhumane manner obviously calls for a very strong answer. And the reason why this is so horribly prolonged and difficult, specifically in that arena, which is the Gaza arena, is for a very simple reason, and that is the kidnapping and the capturing of our people. Yeah. And it was not in an act of war, it was in an act of absolutely disgusting, planned onslaught, surprise onslaught, and included civilians, women, children, elderly men, absolutely horrific by all international standards. And they themselves published and put online the horrid images, as do the jihadists in Syria right now, vis-a-vis the Druze, and as do others in other places. And that brings me to say that it's not about Israel. It's not about the Jews. We always speak about anti-Semitism and that it's against the Jews. Well, you know what, Jonathan? It's not about the Jews. The Jews are a part of the puzzle. And nobody cares when we talk about anti-Semitism. If anybody cares, this would not have happened. And the international media would not be what it is. And the Holocaust would not have happened. And people would not be blaming us on the 8th of October when on the 7th of October we were murdered, raped, massacred, and burnt. Nobody cares. What they should care about and is not brought, that point is not emphasized enough, is that this ideology is not against Israel. At the core of this ideology is the establishment of a worldwide Islamic caliphate, which is not well suited to liberal Western values whatsoever. And anybody who does not understand that will face it in a horrible, terrible way. We can already see that.
I want to ask you in relation to that. You said in that Channel 4 interview, you kind of expressed that very clearly, I think.
Let me explain something to you. If you are willing to have your daughters 30 meters away from terrorists who have said again and again, very, very unashamedly, that they will carnage, massacre, rape, and burn them because they are British or Christian or whatever it is that you belong to, and you feel that your government should not do anything at all, plus your government would be giving food to those specific people who wish and claim again that they will ravage, massacre, burn, and rape your daughters, and you feel that this is a normal situation, and you feel that it is correct to give them a state, which they had since 2005. They had independence.
Okay.
And what did they do with that independence? They carnaged their own territory.
You made it direct. You said you challenged Matt Fry, who's a German British news presenter, and you asked, you in the West, would you give a state to people who want to kill your family? Has that always been your perception of Palestinian statehood? Were you ever in favor of a two-state solution? If you were, why? What changed? And if you weren't, could you explain it a bit? Why Palestinianism, let's say, as I know it's become called, is an expression of the exact thing you've just described?
So first of all, I think a person living here who says they have not changed in some way following October 7th is almost inhumane. I don't know how that is frankly possible. All of us who have children, I mean, there are no real words to describe. It's quite surreal. People were walking here for months, men, macho men, with wide-eyed trauma at what had happened. I mean, this was horrific. None of us could have believed that within the state of Israel, this could have happened. So to say that nothing changed since then would be wrong. I did believe that some kind of, not a regular state, but a state which would allow full autonomy, of course, cultural, educational, international affairs, day-to-day dealings, economy, trade, and so on, everything except a full-blown army, given what had happened to us in the past, at least for a certain number of years in order to test that out. Yes, I believed in that.
And now?
Despite being an Arabist, despite understanding not only the language, not only having lived, learned, studied, went in depth into the mentality and the culture and so on. But literally, having lived here for so many years and seen what had happened, and also listening in Arabic to what our neighbors say, they are not ashamed of what they say. They say things relatively clearly.
Drew, just to be blunt, because I mean, you're right, but they've always said it. So was it really a conversation Israel was having with itself? Was it a fantasy, not just of the West, of people like Keir Starmer or Macron, but also actually of generations of Israelis? That is to say, were you and plenty of others in Israel just wrong before October the 7th to entertain that idea?
I think that a Western mind that is not indoctrinated with hate, we learn songs of peace in the kindergarten. That's what our kids sing. We are not educated to hate Muslims or Arabs. We're just not educated to do that. It doesn't mean that there are no people within the 8.5 million Jews who live in Israel who don't dislike Arabs. Yes, there are. There are. I'm not proud of it that they dislike Arabs simply because they're Arabs, but there are some. But we are not taught to hate, to detest, to nullify, to exterminate, to kill, to make them at all. On the contrary, we are taught, and the Western mind cannot even fathom this kind of hatred, and therefore even people who understand Islam, understand the language, know their history, hear what the leaders on the other side say in Arabic in interviews. For example, Hamas leaders, Qatar. Qatar has, a two-tier kind of language, as do others. For example, Arafat and the Palestinian Authority. They say one thing in Arabic and they say another thing in English. And it's absolutely unbelievable that despite all of that, yes, the Western mind could not comprehend or fathom the depth of this hatred until October 7th. I believe it was significantly game-changing in the perception. And to create a state next to Israel, armed to the teeth, with that kind of indoctrination that has been going on not only in the Gaza Strip, but also in the Palestinian Authority. And it's very easily proved. It's not my senseless, directionless statement. The indoctrination is in the books, in the culture, everywhere. This is unbelievable because we cannot allow a state that teaches its children to kill us. That's suicide. Now, England, France, Europe, the United States of America, Canada cannot allow this population, which clearly states that that's what they want, and they have their own schools, and they infiltrate the local schools with their curriculum, and they teach in their central kind of cultural centers an indoctrinated ideology that speaks of hatred towards the country in which they are. Let's take a very, very recent example. There were hundreds of thousands marching in Australia a few days ago on the bridge, so-called for Palestine. This wasn't a march for Palestine. This was a march to say, we are here. This is our way to show that we are taking over. And they were yelling, down with the bridge. What does the bridge have to do with Palestine? It's an Australian bridge, Australian infrastructure. Australia is the country where they receive their social rights, their citizenship, this hospitality that they're enjoying. It has nothing to do with Israel, the Jewish people, Palestine. This is a rhetoric which has been brainwashed into the minds of everybody, including Israel, including Israelis, by a very sophisticated machine which is funded by Qatar. That this is an Israeli-Palestinian issue. This is not an Israeli-Palestinian issue. Yes, the Qataris and the people heading the Qatari regime hate Israel. They lead an ideology of Muslim Brotherhood, but they also hate the Egyptian leadership strongly. They also hate the Jordanian leadership. They also hate the former Syrian leadership because it was Shiite, and Shiites for them are not even Muslims. They're worse than Jews. They're not even infidels. They are worse than non-believers.
So let me ask you then, it seems that your warning here is this is not a land dispute. This is not even a dispute of a people who have been dispossessed. You're saying this is a religious war, and that actually not only is it a religious war that Israel's engaged in, that all of the rest of us are also engaged in it too, but at least Israel knows that the war has started and that it's in the thick of it, that basically in the West, in Australia, in Europe, even in the States, maybe people are still fast asleep. Is that really what you're saying here? This is a religious war, and that war is against fundamentalist Islam?
I have nothing against Muslims, by the way. Let it be very, very clear. Islam can be a beautiful religion. There are people who say that it is inherently a terrible religion. No, it can be made extremist, and it can be broadcast in a manner which is political for the benefit and the power of certain leaders. And that is what the Islamic Brotherhood started, a political stream of Islam that almost all means justify the end. And the end is creating a worldwide radical Islamic caliphate based on Sharia. In other words, all women are secondary to men. They must all be covered. Sharia law is the ruling law. Anyone who does not accept Islam can either be murdered, they have to be murdered, or pay jizya, a tax, or the women and the children would be taken as slaves, as we saw. Again, it used to sound like science fiction, like a story, like something we saw from the, Alibaba kind of hundreds of years ago tales that were told. It's not. This is the reality that is being promoted currently in Syria. This is the reality that Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood, even though they don't necessarily like one another, but they're all promoting. This is the ideology that Erdogan, the president of Turkey, which is an extraordinarily strong, huge, wonderfully placed in a geostrategic country, member of NATO, is actually forwarding. And when you see his speeches, just look on his sites. There are Ottoman guards dressed as Ottoman guards from hundreds of years ago, from the 16th century, next to him, as if we are in a Purim dress-up party. This is what he aims to achieve. He doesn't make a secret out of it. And the West needs to understand it's not about Israel. Israel is important because Jerusalem can galvanize support amidst the entire Muslim world. Again, because of indoctrination. We can argue whether it's important in the actual religion or not. But literally, the importance is the understanding and the comprehension amidst the West that this is not an Israel, Palestine, Israel, Hamas, Israel, Arab issue. It's not about anti-Semitism. This is just a symptom.
So, do you still think you're a centrist?
I think I'm a centrist because I have left-leaning social values that are important for me to promote. I'm a person that thinks rationally, not extremely to the right, not extremely to the left. There are also circumstances that make decisions for politicians and for decision makers and for statesmen very difficult and challenging. And in the realm in which we are finding ourselves, which is a very difficult realm, I'm talking about Israel. And of course, currently the Jewish people, because there's a huge wave of anti-Semitism because of the indoctrination, because nations throughout the world are allowing this hatred to formulate. What they don't understand is that that's just a step. Let's look around us. Yazidis are not Jews. Why are they being murdered? Druze are not Jews. Why are they being murdered? Brits are not Jews. Why are their girls being assaulted? There are so many examples. When demonstrations in France, what you hear is down with France. That has nothing to do with us.
And why do you think that?
Am I a centrist? Yes, I'm a mother. I'm a heartfelt humanist.
I hear you.
This is not humanity. This is inhumane ideology.
So I guess the question is then, why do you think that your views to many in Britain sound, let's say, far right? They call people with views like yours about Islam in particular fascists, racists. How do you think the left has been captured so decisively in countries like the UK, when what you're saying, of course it rings true, that, you know, women's rights, gay rights, all of the rights of minorities, Jewish or not, these are all, they're certainly not far right ideas and policies, and yet the left has been well and truly captured, it would seem, by a sympathy for what you've said originates in Qatar, this sort of Qatari PR job for radical Muslim Brotherhood style Islam. How on earth has that happened?
So first of all, to my impression, there are very many British people, simple people that want to live, that do not adhere to what you're saying. I'm not sure if there are specifically those patriots or right-wingers that just feel that something is very, very wrong in what's happening in the UK. However, of course, as you say, there are many who are violently, absolutely unbelievably on the side of seeming terrorists, Hezbollah, Hamas, and so on, and an ideology, an Islamic ideology that is different to their ideals and to their way of life. And you say, how is that possible? As I said, many billions of dollars were invested not 1 year, not 2 years, not 10 years, but for over 2 decades by 350,000 people. That's the number of Qataris that exist on the face of the planet, but they have unlimited funding in a very sophisticated manner by buying the world. They buy think tanks and soccer groups and other sports groups and hotels and cities and politicians and universities and faculty members, and they've infiltrated into the curricula of schools, not only the academia and the tertiary education. And they've been doing this very, very systematically, very patiently, and very thoroughly. And what they've been doing is basically infiltrating think circles that are liberal. For example, in 1979, we saw an Islamic revolution in Iran. What did that Islamic revolution do? it infiltrated and sort of co-opted the liberals, the students, those people who wanted freedom and equal rights for all, and those young, innocent, beautiful, bright minds who didn't want an autocracy. They wanted democracy. They infiltrated that group, and of course, afterwards, they swallowed them, and it worked brilliantly. The Qataris saw that, and that's exactly what they've been doing. They've been infiltrating liberal groups via social media and via think circles, whether in think tanks, whether in academia, and so on and so forth, and absolutely influencing them, including LGBTQ. Of course, LGBTQ would step foot for 1 second in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, in Egypt, in Jordan, it doesn't matter where. In the Islamic world, they wouldn't survive for 1 second because that is taboo. And it's not taboo in a court of law. They would be murdered without sentence.
Well, that truly is a terrifying message, but one that I think it's important people get to hear. And I hope that you've had a bit more time to express it here than you did in that Channel 4 News interview, though we have also struggled a bit with some ropey internet today and some other technical problems. So maybe we can speak another time as well in more detail. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Ruth, for everything you've been doing and for speaking with me today. That video of you on Channel 4 went viral for a reason, and I hope that more people get to hear your message and the fruits of your knowledge and expertise. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.